Hello and welcome to our Hopton FP&A webinar. Hope you're all keeping well. Just a quick safe harbor statement, first of all, that we've been told we need to add to all presentations. A little bit about ourselves. We've been going since 2021. We've delivered 57 projects so far, over 23 clients using the agile method of delivery. So we work very, very closely with yourselves to make sure that the end result is exactly what you want. We recently took on Pyramid Analytics, which is a larger enterprise project BI tool. It sits above the data and gets lots of different data sources. 6 of us in the company at the moment. We've over 40 years experience in the IT industry. So what have we got here? We've got a financial planning solution built around the Aimplan technology, which allows users to access their financial data from their live system and also lets you import data from spreadsheets, which is usually the initial way of loading in your initial budgets. From there, then we merge those together in Power BI and we produce profit and loss, balance sheets, and many more solutions that sit there. We'll go through those in more depth in a minute. What makes this solution unique is that with Aimplan, we can write back data into the Azure database. So as you can see here, you can go into the spreadsheet or into what looks like a spreadsheet, key in some data, and it stores that information. Now, that's not writing back to your ERP system. That is just writing back to the Azure database, which sits between your ERP system and the front-end dashboard here. So we never write back to the ERP system, and that's important because we're storing and having multiple versions of data, and a lot of ERPs don't have that facility, so we wouldn't have somewhere to put the stuff anyway. And secondly, it just makes more sense to keep the data outside the ERP system. Now, there may be more than one ERP system, of course, and there may be more than one data source, maybe spreadsheets as well. So there may not be a place to write back to them anyway. So we end up 2 data sources at least, your original ERP system, which gives you your accurate data and your up-to-date information. So that's your actuals. And then we have the Azure database, which has the forecasts, budgets, and the supporting data, which goes with that. We bring those 2 data sources together in Power BI, and that gives us then our budgets and our forecasts. So we consolidate the data up into the plan itself, entirely automatic. Because it's automatic, it's more accurate, it's very quick, and therefore the accuracy is much, much better than somebody keying in data into a spreadsheet every month and getting it wrong sometimes. You can be very confident then that your monthly figures are right, and also reduces the time. Your month-end time for reporting and producing the account packs should be a lot less. We can also manage internal cost allocations between departments or between companies even, and it works in a very similar way to how you would do it in spreadsheet, but just does it automatically. So we can build a perspective of the company that may not be how the ERP is set up. Often people have had an ERP system for maybe 10, 15 years, and the data and the structure could now be very different than what you need in the business. So this gives you a chance to build your own structure and then be reporting on that without having to go back into spreadsheets every month. Within cost centers, we can allocate light, heat based on different drivers. So the driver could be floor space or it could be numbers of staff. We can have multiple companies within the system itself, and they can also have multiple currencies. So we're able to consolidate and bring together multiple entities, if you like. Staffing cost, again, could be based on a driver, which could be number of staff, could be type level of staff, and that will also flow into the budget and the forecasts. Same using the word drivers here. That's just what we use to manage the way of calculating costs or revenue throughout the system. So we look at sales demand planning. The first thing we think of is actually the data and the management of this can be done outside the financial team. So it's possible now to say, right, sales managers, can you put in your information into this model? And then that gets fed up within the actual system itself. Drivers for this could be type of product, could be customer, could be contract type. So there's many ways of building a sales forecast. The figures can be manually changed as well, and anything like that can be audited. So if, say, for instance, the sales manager gives you a figure first of the month, and then at the end of the next period he wants to change it, that can happen. And she can put in the comments about why she did that as well, and that's totally audited. That's one of the beauties of Aimplan, is that we can reflect the current numbers, but also know what happened. So we have multiple copies of the forecast, and they can be all stored and named. So it's very easy to spot what's going on. We can also run project management within this. So we could, again, have the different costs, could be, say, material. We can also put in when it's needed. We can have third-party costs, internal costs, and just others that they're usual for. The drivers, again, could be time and also the cost that's going on to it. The status of the project can also be used to control how the figures get into the P&L. So maybe if it's a work in progress, it goes to balance sheet. And if it's an ongoing project or an internal capital project, it might well go to P&L. We can also put in billing against projects. So again, if it's a client billing project, a client bill project, we can put in milestones and then put in when we expect to get the invoice out. And again, we can build a cash flow model which could take those pieces of data as well. So we're able to look at KPIs and reporting. That's all standard within the system. We can also produce narrative reporting. So we can have conditional statements in there saying, show me the figures. If the figures are positive, then say something. If they're negative, say something else. So let's have a quick look at the system now and see what it looks like. So when we open the system, first of all, it'll give us a first screen which shows us all the different pieces we can have. So this just gives us a rough idea as to where the information is coming from. What you'll probably find, and what you're used to looking at the moment, is data from your P&L in a spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet is probably going to be a structured one, which gives you like your data here. So in this one, we're just using a table, and we're saying, right, if it's 3, starts with 3, it's got revenue. If it's 4, it's a different type of cost, and so on and so on and so on. So it's a pivot table, okay? And that's how most systems and most people look at their account system. Within this, however, we can also then add a bit more structure to it. So we can put in that these accounts go here, these go here, and then they're added up. Then we have the direct costs, they go in, we can look at net revenue. So this gives us a more structured way of looking at the data and a better way of looking at the data. It also gives the ability to look at multiple companies. So we're looking at one company here, Sweden, but we could also be looking at Norway, Germany, or if we click them all, we could pick up a consolidation view. We're looking at a particular year here. The beauty of demo data is never correct. So we're looking at 21. We can look at projects, we can look at cost centers. So these are the cost centers within that company itself. You'll notice over here on the right-hand side, we've got a little set of graphs and bar charts. They are built on this data. So if this changes, these guys reflect that straight away. If we look at the P&L against plan, again, this is the Aimplan version. Again, we have then quarter 1, 2, 3, 4 across the top. We have all the selections we had before, but we also have a new one now, which is the scenario. So this is using forecast 21, but we could have had the original budget. We could have forecast 2, 3, 4. Every time we go in, we can save a new version of the forecast if we want to. And that gives us the ability to look back at the history and look back at what's in there itself. Some simple KPIs, and of course, we can make these as complicated or as structured as you want. Using Power BI, of course, we have charts. So we have the ability to say, show me some line charts, some bar charts, some tables. And when this guy's catched up here, we can have a look at a few of those. Okay, we'll come back to that. So if I look at my cost forecasts, we talked about drivers earlier on. These can be driven by headcount or can be driven by square footage if we're looking at costs. So we have the ability to go in and say, right, show me my staff costs here. And because we've got Aimplan here, we could say, right, I want to change that. So I'm going to make that 9,000 now. Right. And what you see is that would be reflected across the data here. So that's automatically split that across on the same ratio that was there before. I can put the figures and say, right, actually suggest to me what that figure should be. So use AI or machine learning. I click on that, for instance, I'm a 9 grand because 24 grand. So we're way off in terms of what we think it is versus what the computer thinks it's probably going to be. So we have the ability then to go in and say, well, allocate that based on last year's figures, AI that we saw a minute ago, or break it out evenly across the period. So if I say even, for instance, it should then, if I change that figure and say even, it should then break that across for me. Also have the ability to put in notes and text, so I can add comments, and they're all stored in there too. So the audit trail then gets built up and adds all that data together, so it shows me what's happened. So I can go in at any stage and see what has actually happened on that version of the forecast and all the data that's there. So that's there forever. If we look at the revenue, for instance, we can go in and say, right, what's driving my revenue? And again, we have our ability to say, well, here's some graphs. We're using Power BI, so naturally we're going to pop up a few graphs and some tables up here. That data is based on our sales volume. So our drivers here are our product or products and the quantity we're going to sell. So I can say, right, my target for this is going to be 9 million a year, and I'm going to sell 368 of these Deliox. So let's say I'm going to make that 500. Automatically, our figures are going to change. And automatically, everything is changed above it. Okay. Similarly, if I want to change the total here, say that I want to make that 10 grand. It will then reflect down. So it either adds up to make these figures add up, or then uses the same ratio here if I've changed the top line here. And again, this would have changed. I didn't spot that myself, but it can change too. If I make that a ridiculously large number, say there, 614, for instance, I'm going to make that a couple of thousand, 5,000. You should see a reflection on that in the graph. Yes, we do. All right. We're looking at projects. Again, we can go through and say, all right, show me my projects. This is a CapEx project, so it's an internal project. So there won't be any revenue for it, I would suspect. We have the ability to put in our costs for all the pieces that we want to do. Main thing could be that we have employee hours, and that would then be used to work out our costs for employees. Now, I've got all departments and all companies here, but if I was a manager, I could see just my own department, or if I was a cost center head, I could actually just pick up the ones I wanted. So Hugo there, for instance, 80 hours this month. I might change that to be 40 hours because I know he's going to be on holidays. And it's not a big enough change to make this thing effect, but you can see that it would. So again, we have the utilization of employees, and that then shows us our figures themselves. So all the way along, the idea is that we can collaborate with our team members. They can put in their data that they know of, and that then reflects back up into the P&L. So it takes time out from the accountants department having to do the figures, and also should speed up the end of month process, because you're not having to chase people to go and do stuff. They can do that themselves if they want to do it. So that's our demo. Again, any questions on that, shout them over on the comments. So in summary, we can merge financial and forecast data into one tool. We are leveraging the power of the system itself. It's built from scratch up, so we're not using the structure that's in your ERP, which may not be the one you want to use now. We can build our own structure, and we can collaborate and use self-service for the department heads and managers to put in their own data all the way along. All changes to version control are commented and are audited. So we have a version going back right through. So you could have, say, 12 versions of your forecast, one at the start of the year, 13 budget for the first one, and then forecast 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way up. And each one is stored, and each one has their own version control. So the data for the changes are stored in Azure. We don't write back to the original ERP system or whatever system is being used to capture the original actual figures. And we're able to leverage the power of AI and machine learning, as you saw. Also, this is not a completely eye-watering price tag. The time needed to install and set it up is very short, and the price per user isn't that high either. A couple of questions that have come in from the text here. First one is, what's the minimum number of users? Minimum number of users is 5. One is the person who creates the structure and manages that. That sometimes is us, or it can be yourselves, or it can be us to start, and then you manage that afterwards. And then 4 users to actually use it. So they could be department heads, people in accounts. You can add more of those, and they're slightly cheaper in price than the person who manages the system itself. How long does it take to set the system up? It really depends on your own configuration and how you want it to do. It doesn't take very long, and doesn't take a long or time to manage it either. So it's quite a straightforward system to set up and to build. But it really depends on how complicated you want it, how many components you want. You saw there we had projects, we had revenue, we had costs. That would be typical. A project, maybe not, but internal capital projects may well be. That's it. That's great. Thank you very much for your time. If you want to know more about the system itself, pop onto our website, and there's a working demo there. You can't actually update the figures. Well, you can update the figures, but don't get stored. You can have a play of it though. And give me a shout, or give Simon a shout. There's our details if you want some more. Okay. That's great. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Have a good day.